In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to add the magnets to the bottom of the Mag-Lev train. Now this is the spot where a lot of students get stuck, so if you're watching this video, don't feel like you're alone, because this happens to a lot of students. Let me show you how it's done, and I'm sure by the end of this video you'll realize that it's a pretty easy process once you know a couple simple buttons to press. So let's get started. As you can see, I've already attached one magnet to the bottom of the Mag-Lev train. If we look at the two sides, we can tell that the magnet is perfectly aligned with the piece of wood. We call this being flush. So this magnet is flush on this side and flush here as well. If we rotate a little bit, you can see that the edges are perfectly aligned. Now we're going to go ahead and attach these other three magnets in exactly the same way. So let's get started. The first thing I do is I try to do as much of the work for Inventor as I can. So I go ahead and just kind of drag the magnet in the general area that I want it to go. So in this case, I'd like this magnet to kind of go right over in this area. But it's not touching yet. What I need to do now is I need to attach it. And the button that we use to press that is right up here, constrain. Now if you haven't used this button yet, you'll notice that you'll only find the constrain button in assembly files. And it's used to join different parts together. So we're going to add a constraint, and at this point we need to tell the program what two surfaces do we want to touch. And in this case, I want the top of this magnet to almost be glued up. Let me zoom out a little bit here. Might have to switch my view here. I want the top of that magnet to be glued up to the bottom of this piece of wood. And I press apply. Now, if we listen closely here to what we asked it to do, if we think about this, the program did exactly what we told it to do. We wanted those two surfaces to touch, and they are. But it's not nearly where we want it to be yet, is it? We want this magnet to be right over here. So let's go ahead and add another. We have to add two more constraints. So we go back to the constraint tool, and this time over here this button is called flush, and if we look closely at the icon, we can see that there's two boxes that are aligned. That's what we want to have happen here. We want this surface, the front surface of this magnet, to be aligned with this side right here of the piece of wood, and we press apply. We also want this surface here on the magnet to be lined up with this, and we press apply and cancel. And let's take a look at it from the bottom view, and you can tell that this magnet is now perfectly flush on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and do the next two magnets as well. I'll click on constrain. I'm going to click on the top view of this magnet, and I want it to be constrained against that part of the wood. I press apply. Notice how I press apply between every constraint. I want these shapes to be flush. I'm always kind of up here in the upper right hand corner of my screen using the cube to get the proper views. I believe that part of the a major skill of Inventor that's underrated is the ability to get to the proper view that you need. And to get to that proper view, you need to be using the cube up here. Press apply. And here's kind of a tricky situation. It almost looks as though this magnet did not constrain at all. But if we look at it from the right side, we can tell that it did constrain. It's on the same plane as this piece of wood right here. So we're in good shape. We're in good shape. I'm going to press apply. I'm going to click on flush. I'm going to flush this now, and it brings it right onto the board for us. And this should be my last constraint. Let's take a look at it from the bottom view. And right now we have four magnets that are perfectly constrained onto our Mag-Lev train. The last thing that I want to do is I'm going to show you how to add on the motor onto the back. So I just went ahead and placed in the motor into my assembly drawing. And at this point, what I need to do is, essentially the goal is I want this motor to sit right into this little channel that I cut out for it. And I want the axle, which is right here, to be sticking out the back so that I can put a propeller on there. Now, let's go ahead and get started. In order to make this work, we need to click on constrain, just like we did before. And we're going to constrain the center of this motor, which we can tell by the dotted line here. We want the center of the motor to be aligned with the center of this hole. You see the dotted line? I'm going to left click and apply. Now, the motor is sitting in there almost perfectly. But there's one major problem. Can you tell what it is? The problem is the axle is in front and it should be sticking out here. So, how can we make this work? The answer is we need to use the flush tool again. The sides that we want to be flush are, we want the motor, this side of the motor right here, to be flush with the back of my train. And when I press apply, you can tell that the motor is already flipped around for us. So the center of this motor is still aligned with the center of this channel, but now we have the back part of the motor perfectly flush with the back of our Mag-Lev train. So there's how you do it. Keep in mind, if you have any questions, you can always come and talk to me. But as for now, this hopefully, combined with what we've talked in class, should get you started.